are watching On Top Atlanta. This is Rolonda. We're glad to have you this afternoon. Today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Dennis Kimbro.
And I've been interviewed everywhere, but I've never been interviewed under these circumstances, and I love it. Don't think outside the box. Make your own box. What did Kanye West said? Don't play the hand that the card you were dealt. Go get a new hand. Girlfriend got a new hand. And look at the amenities, man. I love it.
Yeah, you got your coffee?
Yeah, I'm not a big coffee drinker. I got my orange juice in my SUV, so I got up and I've walked my 5 miles this morning, so I'm good to go.
No, okay, so I can tell you are in good shape.
You know, I've been a runner for 35 years, and I got the 2 total knees to prove it. And my orthopedic surgeon said, no more running. He said, but you can walk as far as you want and as often as you want. So,
and you have a birthday coming up?
Got a birthday coming up. I'll be the big bad 6'6" in the next month.
That's awesome. Well, you look good.
And then right after that, in January, we got our wedding anniversary coming up.
Really?
Oh, yeah, 45 years. Me and my wife were seniors in college, got married by a justice of the peace, and after we got married, went back to class, and we've been in our little rowboat together. So
I love it. I love it. It still is possible.
Yeah, it's still possible. And don't you know, okay, I got 3 daughters, all of them married, all of them doing their thing, and parents and blah, blah, blah. And 2 of them married into families in which their in-laws married longer than me and my wife.
Really?
Yep. So they call us newlyweds.
So we should not believe what the media says.
No.
About black love.
Oh, yes. I mean, I said, whoa, man. So they've been at the game a little bit longer than me and my wife.
That's awesome. I'm glad to have you. Let's go ahead and dive in. Okay, so you have how many books?
I got 5 books out, and 3 are bestsellers. So I've been blessed, and I was just sharing with you my first book, recently translated into Japanese, 1 million copies in print. There you are, 1 million copies in print, trying to help folks with their dreaming and endeavors and the like, giving folks the keys, hopefully to success and leadership and all that stuff.
All over the world.
All over, and I mean all over the world, baby girl. I've been. Ooh, when you can say that you've been to Iceland in the middle of winter, you've been all over the world. The absolute coldest weather. And listen, I went to grad school in Chicago, so I know about cold weather, but I ain't never seen nothing like or felt anything like that.
I don't think I want to take that trip. But this book, What Makes the Great Great, this is like one of my favorites. I read this a long time ago, and it helped me through so many different obstacles in life.
Wow.
But yeah, this is like one of my favorites. I haven't read this one, so I'm glad, you know.
Oh yeah, there you are. I was trying to bring my 5th book, The Wealth Choice, but I'm all out of that.
Well, I'll buy that one.
Okay.
I'll buy that one. So, let's talk about so you have 4 books. There's obviously when a lot of people found out that you were going to be on the show today, I got like a lot of inboxes and texts saying that they were excited that you were going to be here, and as well as my testimony, they have always been affected by your wisdom and your speaking and your books and how encouraged and inspired they are. But what I don't want to do, I don't want to talk about the books.
Okay.
I want to talk about how we can execute and with everything that's going on today. 2016 has been, I believe, one of the most interesting years for the black community.
Sort of reminds me back in the 1960s and 70s. I'm an old hand, so man, I remember that time period. I don't mean to cut your question off, but I mean every day was something different, and just got to make sure that you get out in front of it. And how do you get out in front of it? You got to be certain in uncertain times. Dennis Kimbro, what in the world are you talking about? You always focus on your goals. What I tell my students, your goal is your devotion. So you've got to, you got to put a barrier up there with your devotion that it's not distracted. Don't let anybody distract your devotion. What is your number 1 goal? Why are you here? When are you going to put your fingerprints on life and prove you were here? Why did the Lord take time out of his busy schedule to blow breath into your lungs? You know, when you were born, your work was created with you. Your dream was created with you. When are you going to prove that you were here?
Wow.
So that's the number one reason why we're here. I didn't choose to be here, and you didn't choose to be here. The bottom line is we were chosen. And we get our 30,000 days on earth like everybody else. And that's the average lifetime, 30,000 days on earth. Time isn't running out, but your life is. So what are you going to do with the rest of life that you have left? Now, you can be distracted, Donald Trump, the police, this, that, and everything. Or you can chase your dream and your vision. And that's it. You can make money or you can make excuses, but you can't do both.
So, on that note,
as you take a sip of your Starbucks.
I need a little kick here. I need a little kick. So, on that note, let's talk about the election.
Yeah.
A lot of us were affected. As I'm just gonna say me. I was definitely moved in.
No, I don't think you were more affected than my wife.
Oh my God! I literally went into isolation.
Yeah.
Removed myself from social media. I'm still not watching the news. But I knew, okay, let me shake it off.
Yeah.
Let's get, pull up the bootstraps.
Yeah.
Let's continue to, well, with me, I've always said I wanted to do better than I did yesterday.
Yep.
With the election, how do we move forward in our community, with the black community? Donald Trump has said that the black community is in hell. We are, we have no money, we have no education, we have no jobs.
What do you have to lose?
What do you have to lose? And my thing was everything.
Yeah,
so what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on, on all that?
Well, I'm a Johnny come lately. I mean, I don't have the answer. The answer was given to us years ago when Booker T. Washington said, you start where you are with what you have, knowing that what you have is plenty enough. And what did he say? What is responsibility? It is respond with ability. And there's no need to fear. Because Martin Luther King said, the arc of the universe always bends towards justice. I mean, that's a part of karma. So he's in office right now, but that psychic and that universal karma is bending towards truth. And what do we have to do? Again, what are the goals? What are you trying to do? We live in a time period where we talk about collective activism and we talk about unifying and joining ranks. But today's time period is a little bit different. We are in sort of as I said, a universal time period that is based off of you. And, it might be nice that we join forces in the black community, but, Donald Trump and the Republican Party and the way that this country is going right now has served notice that if you're going to reach goals and objectives, what are you as an individual doing? And that is the bottom line. You made the comment that Black America's poor, blah, blah, blah. Well, let's start with that. The fact of the matter is that, 34 million African Americans strong, and we are the 16th wealthiest country on the face of the earth. 16th wealthy. Here we are on Black Friday, and our buying power is $1.6 trillion. Well, I mean, when you look at the GDP of America, it's only $17 trillion. We are 1/10 of it. So, just like Moses, when he was buttressed up against the Red Sea and Pharaoh's armies coming, he gets on his knees and he says, Lord, why have you forsaken me? And what did the Lord of heavenly hosts say? Why does thou cry unto me? So I'm saying the same thing to Black America. Why does thou cry unto me? You've got the resource. You got the money. You got the capital. Your problem isn't poverty. Your problem is that you're broke. You give your money away. I mean, when you look at the top brands out there, Wall Street would collapse tomorrow if we would just withhold our money and just spend it in your community. Do what every other community does. The average dollar stays in the East Indian community for 45 days before leaving. The average dollar stays in the Asian community 24 days before leaving. The average dollar stays in the Jewish community 17 days before leaving. Average dollar stays in Black community for 6 hours before leaving. As a matter of fact, if we get paid on a Friday, we won't wait till Monday. No, we got to go to a little ATM machine and cash that check on a Saturday. And that's why they even open on a Saturday. Banks open half a day on a Saturday. Who? For Rhythm Nation. Change the way that you think about money. Change the way that you think about opportunity. You know, what is entrepreneurship? Black businesses, you know, they're problem solvers. You solve a small problem, make a little bit of money, but you solve a big problem and you get bank like Hank. And I know that maybe you didn't want to hear that. All right. So we quote unquote lost the election. Well, you got to, you know, join forces, and I'm not saying you got to be for Donald Trump, but you're going to have to operate with those folks who are in power right now. And how do you let them know that you got power? Gandhi said it years ago. There's only one way for you to give up your power, and that's to think that you're powerless. Okay? Don't think that you're powerless. You know, start looking for opportunities to make a difference. Start looking for opportunities to make inroads. Start making an opportunity to change your community, and that's what we got to do right now.
So do you think we'll ever come together as a unit?
Yeah, we're doing that now.
Okay.
That's why I love Black Lives Matter. I mean, we're doing that now. I'm not saying Black Lives Matter is sacrosanct. There's not any challenges or whatever. I was on a radio show, and the host, you know, we were talking about economic development, and sure enough, it turned to police and Black Lives Matter. And she wanted my take on it. And I said, you know, we're in the middle of a perfect storm. She says, what do you mean? I said, on one hand, you got, you know, a criminal justice system that has zero regard for the black community. I didn't say no regard. I said zero regard. Now, my brother, he was a state trooper. That's what he did for. I got two nephews who are law enforcement. You know, one works in drugs and the other one works blah, blah, blah. And law, so I know you got zero regard for the black community. Then on the other hand, you got 34 million African Americans. You got an entire black community who is in complete denial about the state and the status quo and the mental well-being of black males. So you may not be able to make a difference over here in the criminal justice, but we can certainly make a difference in our communities. You know, we got, you know, leave your community 9 to 5, and then no, I'll tell you what. Better yet, don't leave the community Monday through Friday. Stay in the community and watch everybody go to work 9 to 5. And what I want you to do, I want you to go up Campbellton Road. I want you to go up Jonesboro Road. I want you to go up Candler Road, you know, and I want you to go up Riverdale Road. And tell me what you see between the hours of 9 to 5. Who do you see walking the streets? You see desperate and vanquished men. Desperate and vanquished men. And what do we know about desperate and vanquished men? Desperate and vanquished men, they join ISIS. Desperate and vanquished men, they join gangs.
So, to your point, there is a problem. We just said where there's a problem, there's a solution. What is the solution? We already know that there's issues with the black men in the community. What is the solution? Where do we start?
We start with yourself.
Okay.
You start with families, you start with the school system, but you start with consciousness. Get out of denial. That's the bottom line. You know, I like to use so many different spiritual anecdotes and whatever, and, you know, I don't know if I did this when I was back on Barbados, but I shared the story where Jesus had been missing for 3 days, and when they found him, you know, he got berated. He said, Jesus, where you been? I mean, you got people worried. You know, we were looking for you. And what was his bottom line? What did he say? What was his response? His retort? We said, wait a minute, you're looking for me? You should have known where I've been. About my father's business. Well, what is your father's business? Your father's business is growth. Your father's business is development. Your father's business is reading the books. Your father's business is being better today than you were yesterday, not being superior. If you don't read, if you don't study, if you don't grow, if you don't develop, if you don't go to seminars, if you don't go to the conferences, if you don't take in the information, somewhere out in the universe, somebody else will. And the day that you meet that other person, you lose. You lose. So what do we got to do? We got to grow as a people. We've got to grow in terms of our spiritual, moral, intellectual development. And that starts as an individual basis. So you want to make a difference? Run for school board. You want to make a difference? I mean, get involved in your community. You want to make a difference? I mean, extend a helping hand out here. And that's what we need to do.
So in terms of mental illness in the community, because I know that is a problem.
Yeah, there's no financial deficit. There's a spiritual deficit. You know, let's get clear about this. All right, here's Donald Trump, and he's filling all his cabinet posts, and I just saw where he got the governor out of South Carolina. She's going to be Secretary of State. Then he's got the following individuals for the drug czar, and we got this person for the educational czar. Well, we got 50 million different czars in posts. But what about a spiritual czar? You know, what about, putting our mind on the right track to deal with all the nonsense that we are going through? Now, I'm going in a circuitous way, but I mean, that's the only way that we are going to solve so many of our quote-unquote problems. And that's probably the number one problem, thinking that you got a problem. Thinking that you got a problem. No, just overfill your place. Yes. Begin with you.
Start with you.
And that's not me. I mean, that's the three greatest social movements. Okay, like I said, I'm 66 years old for all practical purposes. And, the three greatest social movements that these eyeballs have seen. Well, I heard about Gandhi in 1929, but I saw Nelson Mandela, and I saw the same thing with Martin Luther King. And, what was different about these social movements? They were all spiritually based. If you want to march with Martin Luther King, I mean, he had a dress code. King had a dress code. He wanted you in your Sunday best. Yeah. When those fire hoses were on you, when those German Shepherd dogs were nipping at your little legs and ankles. Why? That's the image he wanted on the 5 o'clock news. If you march with Nelson Mandela, he had a day out of the week for prayer and fasting. The same thing with Gandhi. In 1929, the British government, they approached Gandhi and said, who is leading this movement? And what did Gandhi reply? The still small voice. They were spiritually based. Well, if it worked for them, it might work for you as an individual. But I know some folks don't want to hear that and talk about that, but I'm giving you my take on how we're going to find enduring solutions. Years ago, I had a presentation in Detroit, and I didn't know it until the day of I'm going to the airport. My wife placed the plane tickets in my hand and blah, blah, blah. And I saw, ow, Pat, I'm flying Northwest Airlines. Because I usually fly Delta leaving out of Atlanta. Man, girl, they got me on Northwest. She said, just take your little hips on, blah, blah, blah. You're in first class anyway. So there I am with an attitude. Northwest, man, first class. This is how the Spirit, the Lord moves things in your favor. I got to the gate, and I was the only individual in first class on Northwest Airlines that wasn't a member of the Temptations or the Four Tops.
Really?
They were going back to Detroit. They just got through performing here in Atlanta, blah, blah, blah. And they're flying back there. Right across from me in first class was Levi Stubbs. Right behind me was Melvin Franklin. And in front of me was Dennis Edwards and blah, blah, blah. And I just had a great time interviewing these guys. So they asked me, he said, what do you do for a living? I said, I'm a college professor. He said, oh man, you deal with those hip hoppers now. And I said, yeah, I got a few. That's the age group, blah, blah, blah. And Levi Stubbs said to me, he said, well, you need to tell those hip hoppers that the most money they're ever going to make in the game is when the next rap tune is released. I said, what do you mean? He said, we make more money today than we ever made in the 1960s, and we work 1/3 of the time. I said, translate. He says, well, we only work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're going back to be with our grandkids all week, man. We're in demand now. And I said, why? He said, because our music is about love, and love endures. Yes. He said, all they want to hear is my girl. I got sunshine on a cloudy day. Well, I said, wow. I said, maybe we can, Black Lives Matter. But let's take it one step further. Do Black Lives matter to Black people?
Wow.
Yeah, okay, when we see the police, Black Lives Matter. What about on our community? Do Black Lives matter to Black people? That's something to think about. So think about the killings and think about blah, 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 and this, that, thing. I know you don't want to hear that. Next question.
I love it. No, we are definitely on the same page, and this is what I need for us to hear. We're looking for someone on the outside to save us, but it starts.
No one's gonna save us but us.
It starts within us, and there was back in March. No, was it May, June when all the protesting started? Well, protesting and marching started. With Black Lives Matter a while back, but it became more,
accentuated.
To
the forefront, front and center. Bam, right in your face. Now, what are you going to do?
So what are your thoughts on protesting and marching?
It's necessary. I mean, it's necessary. I mean, it's got a historical consequence, and you just look at it. I mean, and it started years ago when Socrates took the hemlock, man. Sure, I'll gladly take the hemlock rather than give up my spiritual views about humanity. So, I mean, you know, that's the way a lot of things get done. People don't notice until you drop it front and center on their lap.
So is there a difference between protesting then versus now?
Nope.
There's not?
Nope.
Okay.
At least my take on the fact of the matter is nothing has changed. It is how you respond.
Okay.
And again, going back to Booker T. Washington, he said you always respond with ability. But the bottom line is, yeah, there's a purpose for it. But my thought pattern is it spiritually based? Do you know the truth? Are you leading with love? You know, here we are, and I'm over there looking at the computer, blah, 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 that company over there. Okay, imagine this. You go back home, and we had to reload the link and this, that, and everything. And you say, man, I got a virus on my computer. Man, I got to take it back to Office Depot. I got to take it back to Office Max. And you walk into Best Buy, Office Depot, and Office Max, and they say to you, have you backed up your files? And you say, yeah, I backed up my files. Good, because I'm going to restore your computer to its original default. Okay. So what happens when we get a mental virus? When you and I get a spiritual virus, what do? Well, we got to be restored to our original default. And what is our original default? Love. Every problem that you see out in the world is because love has been withheld. So are you going to add to the problem? Or are you going to restore the problem to its original default?
Got you. Okay. So again, back to the protesting. Is there a difference between the way they did it? Because you said when Martin Luther King, when he did the protesting and the marching, they had to dress a certain way. They had to present themselves a certain way. Do you think it's the same? Do you think it's being presented the same way? And are we getting more effective?
Great. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yes.
It depends on where it's going. It's still in process.
Okay.
Now, the leaders of quote-unquote Black Lives Matter, they don't want to be out in front of it. They say, this is a leaderless movement. But something tells me sooner or later they're going to have to step up. Something tells me sooner or later they're going to have to step up and take control of this. So we're still in the process. If Black Lives Matter is now default and defunct and goes away, then I'm saying, yeah, they fell short of the mark. But it's still going. And unfortunately, I hope that we never have to have another march or protest for police shootings anymore. But suppose that we do. Sooner or later, people's going to ask, who's in front of this movement? When are the leaders going to speak up?
That's going to be my next question.
And you're going to see that, in January with the Million Woman March. They will probably make an appearance at the Million Women's March and say, hey, listen, we got the message. We grabbed the big picture. We see where this is going, and these are the changes that we're going to make. And I understand that Black Lives Matter now has got a economic development arm. They're going to focus on economic development in the community. And there's really no need for economic development outside the fact that control the money that you have. That's number one. That's the number one. You talk about activity. You want to, take steps. You want to make a difference. Control the money that's in your pocket.
So the difference between the way I hate to keep kind of going back to this.
Oh no!
The difference, I feel like the difference between the way they marched and protested, then they had an agenda. They knew what they were. They knew what they wanted in return. The difference now is, I feel it's just a bunch of noise. In the beginning, that's how I felt. It was just in protesting, we're making noise. But what is it that we want specifically? Because we went up against Barack Obama. We were upset with him because a lot of us felt like, well, not me, but some of us felt like he didn't do enough for the community. But what did you want from him? What did you want from him, being that he was in power? But was that on a federal level or was that on a local level? Because some of the things that they are asking for is on a local level. But unless you understand how the system works in the process, then you will see we could have made a much better difference and a much better impact on a state and local level. But people don't understand that whole process. So tell me your thoughts on that.
Well, it depends on what you wanted out of the deal. What you said and what I wanted out of the deal are somewhat different. I mean, he served his purpose as far as I'm concerned. Why? He showed us what the best and brightest look like. He brought out the best in all of us. If there was anything about Barack Obama's or Michelle Obama's character, if they had any type of character flaw, it would have been front and center on the news.
Absolutely.
They were above
Absolutely.
board. They brought out the best. You look at Michelle Obama, and you just, just like my grandmama, just, patting her chest. Lord have mercy. As my old football coach said, that's what the first string looks like. Football coach said, I want you looking good when you step off the bus. Well, that's what the varsity looks like, and they look good stepping. And not just them. I mean, their children, the grandmother, everything about them was saying, that's what I want to be. And that's, you talk about character. There are 21 different human values. And the most powerful is love. And number 2 is character and integrity. And what the hell is character and integrity? Being the same behind the curtain that you are in front of the curtain. And they satisfied that quest. Now, there's folks that said, well, we want jobs and we want this and we want that. Well, what Obama, the Obama family did, they would allow us to even talk about it. Before, people wouldn't even talk about it. They wouldn't even converse about it. It was taboo. Don't put your dirty laundry, and certainly don't talk about race. As a matter of fact, we got a code word for race. We'll talk about diversity and blah, 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 and this, that, and everything. And then you got white America. Well, you got a black president, so you don't need anything else. Right. But he said, let's talk about it. Let's have, a dignified conversation about it. And to me, he has satisfied that quest. I got no problems with Obama. I got no problems, now it is up to me as an individual. What am I going to do about it? And that's where the problem is, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to make a difference?
And that was my question.
And there's only 4 things in life you want to do. Number 1, you want to make a difference. Number 2, you want to make a difference with others who want to make a difference. Number 3, you want to make a difference with others who want to make a difference doing something that makes a difference. But number 4, you want to make a difference with others who want to make a difference, doing something that makes a difference at a time when it makes all the difference in the world. And this is the time. You look at Black America. Okay, 1/3 of Black America is at the poverty line or below. Half of all Black children live in poverty. So you got plenty of opportunity. I mean, you look at unemployment rates. The unemployment rate in the Black community has been twice that of the white community. Has been that way for the last 40 years. You look at, salaries. There isn't a state in the nation that'll pay you on par what they pay me dollar for dollar. There isn't a state in the nation that will pay a woman more than 88 cents for every dollar that they pay a man. Well, you got an opportunity to make a difference. And that's why I was voting for Hillary. Because Hillary, and I know Bernie and I know Trump and everything. Hillary was the only one that was really talking about salary adjustments and salary pay and scale, blah, blah. And I got 3 daughters and 2 granddaughters, so that hit a hot button with me. So there are plenty of opportunities out there for you to make a difference.
So would you hold making a difference? So we have Black businesses, we have athletes, we have entertainers.
Oh yeah.
How do we hold? Oh, let me come back to that because I don't want to forget about this. You were talking about the dollar and keeping the money in our community. Back over the summer, we deposit our monies into the Black banks.
Yep.
How do we hold them accountable? How do we? Because
again, you're missing the point. It's going back to you. You can't. Don't worry about anybody else. But what are you doing as an individual? I don't. I can go ahead and say, yeah, we need to go ahead and put our money in Black banks. We need to go ahead and support Black businesses. We need to go ahead and support those Black organizations. You got 400 of the top Black organizations from Urban League to NAACP and the 398 in between them. Yeah, we need to support them. But, people vote with their money every day. I have no problem. You want to do that, you do you. But you can't complain about it.
You can't complain about it. So how do you hold, going back to the athletes, how do we hold them accountable? They have a platform.
Yeah.
We give them our money. How do we hold them accountable?
Well, years ago, for my 5th book, I held a focus group in Washington, D.C. And over a 7-year period, I interviewed and surveyed at least 1,000 Black millionaires. You got 35,000 Black millionaires in the United States, and I know over a 7-year period, I rubbed shoulders with 1,000. Well, I had a focus group in Washington, D.C. with nothing but Black millionaires in there. There were like 100 Black millionaires in that focus group. And Bob Johnson of BET was in the focus group, and he said something to me so profound. He said, as you know, I am the owner of the Charlotte Hornets. I said, yep. He says, as you know, there are 32 NBA teams, professional teams. I said, yes, I know. He said, as you know, every NBA team, including with the taxi squad, has 13 to 15 basketball players. I said, yes, I know. He said, as you know, every NBA team is at least 80% black. He said, from an economic standpoint, this is the most powerful group of black males in the world. He said, that's the good news. He says, the bad news is, and he says, no one knows how they spend their money. He said, I sign their paycheck, and they won't even come to me for financial advice. Okay? Here I am speaking to a professional sports team. I'm in the locker room. I'm not going to tell you the team who I spoke to, but it was one of the NBA teams. And I told him the book that I was working on. And I said, I made the contention up front that I didn't want any athletes or any entertainers in the book. And he said, why? And I said, we're overrepresented. We're overpopulated in that area. And one of the basketball players said, oh man, Doc, you really need to interview me, survey me, blah, blah. I said, no, I'm into wealth, not income.
Wow.
So I made my point.
Okay.
Okay? That's all I can do is make my point. You go ahead and do what you want to do. But the good news is the message is getting through. Here we are in Atlanta, and as you know, Atlanta is #1 in the nation in retired black NFL players. And they are making a difference in the community, because plenty of times they ask me to come speak to the group and this, that, and everything. So it's taking a little bit of time, but as I said in the book, there are 7 laws of wealth, and number 7 is make thy money grow. Make thy money grow. And that starts as an individual basis. Find multiple streams of income. And the quickest way for you to find a stream of income, save 10% of everything that you earn.
I got that out.
Yeah, if you can't save 10% of everything that you earn, seeds of greatness aren't in you. Okay, here I am, and I'm wearing a nice suit, and the suit looks nice, and I remember when my wife bought this suit for me in 1993.
Really?
Yeah, look, got my name on there, Dr. Dennis Kimbro. Look at that, man.
Still
1993. I got wear a
awesome.
nice suit. Man, Doc, I like this suit. I remember years ago, I'm at the BET Awards, and I walked the red carpet and said, we want you to walk the red carpet. And I walked the red carpet, and the security guard said, man, where'd you get that suit? I said, this suit? Man, I like that suit. And I said, yeah, my wife liked that suit too before I had done the suit. She said, she bought that for me in 1997. Man, get out of here, right? Now, my daughters, that's something completely different. There ain't nothing in their closet 7 days old, man. But we won't go there. Now, you talk about making a difference, man, blah, blah, blah. You like the shoes? Shoes 10 years old, man. They ain't got nothing 10 minutes old, man. But that's a sermon for another Sunday, and this is a Friday, so we will save that. I stay in my lane. Look in the trunk of the car. I said, why are the shoes in the shoe boxes with the price tags still on? Yeah. That's a woman thing, and we're going to leave that.
Leave it alone.
Yep. And what do we know about black women? Black women, you are 6% of the population, but you buy 24% of all shoes and cologne manufactured in this country. Now, I have no problem with that because I got 3 daughters. Go ahead and buy it. But I tell my daughters, when am I going to see students? I teach at Clark Atlanta School of Business. When am I going to see students in my class that are on a full ride with Baker shoes? Baker shoes, I got you a tuition, girl. Ferragamo shoes, I got you, girl. With some other brands of it, yeah. Huh?
They still have Bakers?
Yeah. At one time, the second highest ranking individual for Baker shoes was a black female who finished from Harvard.
Really?
Harvard class of 1977.
Wow.
The class of 1977 at Harvard had more black females that made it to the C-suite than any other class at Harvard had.
Wow.
But yeah, that's making a difference. So, but we're gonna leave that alone.
I'm thinking
that's
here.
A sidebar. We'll put that on the sidebar.
Okay. Damn, my notes. You threw me off on that one.
Yeah.
Bakers. How do we improve the reputation of black businesses? Because we are stigmatized, especially within each other.
Mm-hmm. And you only got 1 million of them out there.
So
when you look at startups, man, that's nothing. And you look at the annual receipts of them, less than $30,000. So yeah, black businesses, they need a lot of help. And there are 5 phases to entrepreneurship and business development. And we think, and let me give you the full story, we think that the number one problem with black business is startup and financing and blah, blah, blah. No, the number one obstacle for black businesses is the 3rd phase of entrepreneurship, which goes to entrepreneur must go from entrepreneur to managing. A lot of businesses don't know how to manage a business, you know, and Steve Jobs said it all. You're not in business, you know, to make a killing. Money is not the bottom line. I mean, you're in business to fulfill the desires of your customers.
That's number
You're
one.
in business for the love. Money is not the bottom line. Love is the bottom line. You love your customers, guess what, girl? You get more customers. I mean, you even if you're in corporate America, you love your coworkers, you're going to make manager in no time. You love your job, you get in the parking space closest to the building. Love is the bottom line. So number one, find out what you love to do, and then when you find out what you love to do, fulfill the passions of your customers. Now, why do I say that? Because I can tell you the 5 businesses, and I know this is not a business seminar, but I can tell you the 5 businesses with the absolute worst customer service. And 2 of them in the black community are internationally known. Internationally known. But we won't go there. Well, maybe we will go there. All right. Number one, one of the 5. Yeah, one of the 5 are salons, beauty salons. All right. She said my appointment was 11 o'clock, and she didn't show up till 11:15, 11:30. So suppose that happens. One thing that you will never see a white patron coming out of a white restaurant saying, that's why I'm never going to give my business to white businesses no more. But we see black folks coming out of black businesses saying, that's why I don't go to black businesses, because they don't know how to serve anybody. Go find another black business. So you had a bad meal at a black restaurant. Go find another black restaurant to eat. You have 50 million of them out there. But we're the only group that does that. Come on, man. Get over that low self-esteem. And what that is, that shows the congenital effect of slavery. That's what Congress needs to understand. All right, so you had slavery back in 1865. Baby. Slavery is still going on today. The congenital effect. It's passed on from generations to generations to generations to generation through mindset. I showed my students a picture of one of the top cancer doctors. Yeah, she's out, University of California, San Francisco. She is top. I won't reveal her name, but she is one of the top oncologists, and her number one procedure is breast surgery, blah, blah, blah. She does mastectomies, lumpectomies, and all that and everything. And I said to her, Dr. Kimbro, why are you showing us this, blah, blah, blah? And I said, well, she's written more than 300 articles. She's well-renowned and this, that, and everything. And I said, those 2 cancer procedures she can do in her sleep. But the last thing she does when she removes the cancerous tumor, she always takes a tissue sample to send down to the lab. And I asked my student, I said, why does she do that? And says, because she removed the tumor, but she want to make sure that she removed the cancer. Because what do we know about cancer? Cancer spreads. You can remove the tumor all you want, but if you didn't get the cancer out, it'll spread through your body. Now, what does it have to do with you and slavery? Okay, here you got Abraham Lincoln, and, we overcame slavery. Lincoln removed the tumor, but he didn't take a sample of the tissue, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we don't have the Black Codes Law, and we don't have Jim Crow anymore. They removed the tumor, but they didn't take a tissue sample. So what does that mean? The cancer spreads. We're still enslaved. And you look at all the indices that you see today, and that all comes from slavery. All the indices are still there today. Here we are, we're in the OR, and we are bleeding. And what is Congress doing? Congress giving us a manicure. Well, what in the world is I got to do? We're in triage as a race, man. Now look at the unemployment rate. Look at the housing rate. That's the quickest way to wealth in this country is home ownership. And we don't even own homes. What are we, less than 40%? And it all started because of what? Bank of America and Wells Fargo, with that crazy ass, well, we won't go there. They should have been in jail, but that's a sermon for another Sunday. They should be doing time right now. Dirty businesses. They should be providing reparations to the black community right now. And what are reparations? How are reparations going to start? It's going to start with atonement. And what is atonement? Get on there, Trump, Congress, get on there, CNN, and say, I'm sorry. But what is the true meaning of atonement? Yeah, meaning means I'm sorry and please forgive me. But the true meaning of atonement is I will never do that act again. And that's what we need. If they would just say, I'm sorry, and we will never do that act again, man, that would unleash all that would lift up our spirits. As a race would say, well, at least they said that they were sorry. At least they know that there is a problem. That would put pep in our step. That would, what that would do for black males. If you took all the black males right now who are incarcerated in maximum security facilities. I did not say jail. I didn't say Fulton County Jail. I didn't say DeKalb County Jail. I said you got 26 maximum security penitentiaries in the United States. From Attica, New York to San Quentin out in California. 26. And I do my fair share. I'm in them speaking to the brothers. If you took all the black males who are incarcerated in those 26 maximum security facilities and confined them to one central location, don't you know that one central location would constitute the 12th largest city in this country?
Wow.
Bigger than San Francisco.
Wow.
Bigger than Memphis. Bigger than Charlotte. Bigger than Jacksonville. Bigger than Philadelphia. Are you ready for this? Bigger than Miami and Oakland combined.
Wow.
And no one says a thing. We want reparations. Why don't you atone? I'm sorry. And we will never do that act again. Man, brothers were saying, well, damn, at least they said it's sorry. Come on, man, let's get down the road, man. That's the best they going to do. They ain't going to do no more. But that's enough for me to say, listen, we dropped the ball when it came to your race.
That's all we need.
Man, we talking about a lot of issues.
We are.
Yeah, we got issues.
Yeah.
Girl, you got issues. We got issues. But we got workable solutions, and it begins with us.
Yeah, yeah. So,
what does the Bible say? The Bible says 1 is the most powerful number in the universe. 1 is the most powerful number in the universe, man. I mean, what is that? I am more than a conqueror. 1 is the most powerful number in the universe. I mean, 1 smile can change your outlook for the whole week.
That's true.
1 professor can inspire you. 1 teacher can inspire you. I mean, 1 handshake can give you the confidence you need to get that job. 1 Sunday sermon can just, lift you up. 1 mother brought you in this world, but 1 Lord and Savior blew breath into your lungs. Man, what are you waiting on? You got the power. When are you going to use it?
That's deep.
When are you going to use it? Wow. Woo. Next question.
So,
we having church in here?
So, okay, so we talked about the businesses being stigmatized.
Yep. And at one time they weren't stigmatized.
Exactly. No.
That's something new.
Yeah.
Man, years ago I had an interview with Buck O'Neil, and Buck O'Neil, as you know, played in the Negro Leagues. And Buck O'Neil, they thought that Buck O'Neil was going to be the Jackie Robinson, was going to break the color barrier. But Buck O'Neil didn't do it. Josh Gibson didn't do it. Ted Double Duty Dixon didn't do it. Jackie Robinson did it. Okay? So there I am interviewing Buck O'Neil, and he said, I got a chance to play against Babe Ruth. I said, you did? I said, I thought it was, discriminatory. You couldn't play against. He said, no. He said, in the wintertime, we barnstormed against white ball players. We played against them in Mexico and Cuba. And he said, I played against Babe Ruth, and I played against Lou Gehrig, and I played against Joe DiMaggio and all those guys. I said, what was it like? He said they were jealous of the players in the Negro Leagues. I said, why in the world were they jealous of us? He said, because you guys stay in the best hotels and you eat in the best restaurants. He said, if you went back to the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s, the best hotels in St. Louis, the best hotels in Wichita, the best hotels, in Tennessee, the best hotels in Arkansas, whatever, were all black owned. The best cabarets and restaurants were all black owned. He said, man, you guys stay in state-of-the-art places, man, and that's why they were jealous. The best motels, man, all black owned. Well, look what you did. You gave it away.
Yeah.
You get that? That's an industry that you gave away.
Wow.
I mean, the same thing with Madam C.J. Walker with hair care. That's an industry you gave away. I mean, come on, man. So, what was that question you were
where I was going with that? Okay, so the flip side of that is the consumers.
Yeah.
You know, we oftentimes
and
feel
we
like
are consumers, man.
the entitlement, and we want the hookup, and we want, you know, discounts only towards the black businesses. Now we can't do that to other cultures. So what are your thoughts on that, and how can we change that? Again, it goes back to the standards of our business, right? But how do we flip that too? How do we change the condition of that?
Well, in terms of consumers and black business owners, number one, like remember what I said, there are 21 human values, and you never compromise your values.
Never compromise, right?
You never, ever compromise your values. And man, I remember years ago I had a great interview with Greg Barenko, and I always share his story with my students, man. I mean, here's a guy finishes from Southern University, degree in business administration, and for 30 days he went to the #1 dealership. Yeah, Audubon Ford dealership right there in Baton Rouge, trying to be a sales rep. And then in the 1960s, blacks weren't even allowed to go into showrooms and buy cars. They had to sell them the cars outside in the parking lot. You weren't even allowed in there. And he had the audacity to go up to the sales manager, throw out his hand, "Hi, my name is Greg Barenko, and I want to help you sell cars." He did that for 30 straight days until that sales manager finally gave in, and he says, "Listen, I'm going to have you on a tight leash, and you better prove it." He broke every sales record at that dealership, and then he launched his own. But the bottom line, Barenko never lowered his values. Never, ever lower it. We are where we are in life, Black America, by the values that you have set. Now, what does that got to do with the patron? Okay, you go into a black business, keep your standards. Don't lower your standards. Okay, so they didn't put cheese on your hamburger. Something about, no, you're going to put cheese on the hamburger. But that doesn't mean you're going to lower the business. And for you as a black business owner, I mean, you're in business to do one thing and one thing, to wow the customer. Tell my students all the time, see that guy on the street corner with that cardboard sign saying, "I work for food"? He's got the same opportunity as Oprah Winfrey. "Dr. Kimbro, you ain't got the same opportunity." Yeah, anybody can wow the customer. Anybody can do more than what expected, more than what is required. Anybody can go the extra mile. Anybody can say, "Look at me, man." Anybody can be second to, anybody can be world class. Anybody can be best in class. And the two greatest examples, and we all, because we heard this 50 million times before, up on the C-suite for Apple Computer, Steve Jobs had a receptionist. She comes to work late, 30 minutes late. And Steve Jobs says to her, "Why were you late?" And she says, "Steve, my car wouldn't start." She was a single mother out there in Silicon Valley, had an old beat-up Volkswagen Beetle, didn't start. 30 minutes late. So Steve Jobs said, "Oh, okay," walks away. Doesn't say a word to that receptionist to the end of the day. Quarter to six as about quitting time, he walks over to that same receptionist and says, "Hold out your hand." She holds out his hand. Steve Jobs drops in her hand the keys to a brand new Jaguar and says, "Now don't be late again." We ain't going to lower our values. In Black America, we are where we are. Look at so many times, so many problems, we lowered our values. We lowered our values with our HBCUs. We lowered our values with black businesses. We lowered our values with each other. I asked the young ladies in my class, I said, "Young ladies, one day you might want to walk down that aisle and look into the eyes of your soulmate and say those magical words, 'to have and to hold.'" I said, until that day comes, are you going to raise your standards or lower your standards? Dr. Kimbro, I'm raising my standards. As a matter of fact, he's sitting next to me and I'm raising my standards right now. That's what you need to do. You got to hold people accountable. You've got to hold them accountable. You know, if I be lifted up, I draw all men and women unto. What in the world does that mean? If I raise my standards, I'm going to raise the standards. I'm going to lift the lifeboats of everybody around me. And again, going back to the Obamas, man, they brought out and they showed us the best when you do raise your standards. And that's where we are right now. That's where we are right now. When Steve Jobs was a young man, his father said, "Steve, why don't you go out and paint the fence?" He goes out and paints the fence. A day and a half later, his father said, Steve, did you paint the fence? He said, yeah, let me go out and examine your work. His father goes out and said, Steve, you did a hell of a job, but you didn't paint the inside of the fence. Steve said, why in the world would I paint the inside of the fence? No one's going to see it. And Steve Jobs' father says, but we will. 20 years later, he's got Apple Computer, and they're going to go ahead and launch and build the first computer. He brings his graphic designers and engineers together, and he tells them, I want you to produce a computer that when our customers look at it, it'll be state of the art. It'll be flawless. And when they look at the inside of it, man, it'll bring tears to the eyes. And the engineer said, Steve, why in the world will we want the inside of it? No one's going to see the inside of our computer. And Jobs says, but we will. But we will. No, you go the extra mile. When you are the best, when you find your area of excellence. Two things you never have to worry about. Number one, you never have to worry about income, and you never have to worry about employment. Why? The marketplace will seek you out. I've been at this game for 25 years, and not once has anybody ever picked up the phone, got on the phone, and say, bring Dr. Kimbro in to speak. They always call me. One way. They want you, they want you. They don't. No, be the best. And when you become the best, don't keep it a secret. There are 21 different ways to market or sell a product or service. Tell the world about it.
What do we know about marketing right now from the entrepreneurial perspective? 21 different ways to market or sell a product or service. Hear that, entrepreneurs? 21 different ways to market or sell a product or service. Number one is word of mouth. Number two are flyers. Number four, advertising on a bench at a bus stop. Hotshot know-it-all students. Dr. Kimbro, why would anybody want to advertise on a bench at a bus stop? I said, well, great question, but ask ING. That's the mode that they took. Number 21 is internet. Number 20, TV. 19, radio. 18, segmented magazines. Number 7, advertising on the top, advertising on the top of the truck. Why would anybody want to advertise on the top of the truck? Well, suppose your business is near the airport. That's the only way you would see it. Innovation and creativity.
So I went to Ron Clark Academy, and we know in the Atlanta area about Ron Clark. He has a middle school, takes kids from tough backgrounds, circumstances, blah, 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 molds and shapes and whatever. So I took a tour of it. I sat in his math class, and I was just astounded, man. Here he is standing on the desk, and those kids were just enraptured, man, taking notes with both hands and blah, blah, blah. But they give me a tour of the facility. And the school is pristine. Every teacher has their own theme. I remember the social studies, because she likes to travel. She had an old Delta jet. Her classroom was like walking onto a Delta jet. Oh, really? Yeah. And when you walk into a class, she has a gate, like you got the ticket agent, and like it says flight number 20, blah, blah, blah. Flight number 20, that would be the class or the text or the pages that they would read that day. But anyway, so I'm walking out. And as I'm walking out, I look in this one classroom, and you would think that you're in the operating room at Grady Hospital. You could eat off the floor. Everything is shining, everything crystal clear, every book dusted in place, and blah, blah, blah. And I said, whose class is this? And he said, Ron Clark said, this class? I said, yeah, who teaches are there? He said, that's detention. And I said, but no one's in there. And he said, exactly. Now, you go to any black school here in Atlanta, detention looks like DMV. Yeah. Detention, oh, come on, man, blah, blah, blah. He said, exactly. So they're in the classroom learning something. And this is a race that invented education. You invented education. I mean, Imhotep was the father of medicine and the father of mathematics. Before he dies, he pulls a young brother aside by the name of Pythagoras, gives him the mathematical concepts of the universe, and you don't have a high school student who can pass geometry unless you know the Pythagorean theorem. In 401 AD, a black woman by the name of Hypatia invents algebra. You got black kids, I'm no good at math. Wait a minute, you invented algebra, girl. What do you mean you're no good at math? 560 BC, a black man by the name of Aesop invents the written word. There be no Chaucer, be no Steinbeck, be no Dickens, be no Hemingway, be no Shakespeare, unless he invents the written word. And look at us when it comes to, come on, man, raise your standards. Raise, and what is it? What is the definition of an excuse? An excuse is any reason for inactivity.
Wow.
Look, damn it, quit making the excuses, my brother.
Say that again. An excuse.
An excuse is any reason for inactivity. I need to cut my lawn. Can I borrow your lawnmower? No, my wife is baking a cake. Well, what has my wife baking a cake got to do with borrowing your lawn? Nothing, but one excuse will do as another. I mean, blah, blah, blah. An excuse. And that's what we do. We make 50 million different excuses. Everybody at CAU knows my classroom. Why? I got a sign on my door. And that sign reads, if you don't want to work hard, you don't belong here. And if you don't want to lead, under no circumstances, walk through my door. And then if you do walk through my door, you take 5 steps and turn to your right, and I got another sign. And that sign reads, mediocrity is not the standard in this class. Now, you can be mediocre someplace else. But look, damn it, you can't be mediocre here. Go do you. Be mediocre. Take that mess with you. Find somebody to go with you. I'll see you later, brother. So there you know, I'm a hold standard. Now, oh man, Dr. Kimbro, that's mean. Look at all the folks who I interview. I mean, you talk about I interviewed Joe Clark, Lean on Me. And I said to him, I said, Joe, any regrets? He said, regrets about what? You know, when you took those 300 students and had them on the risers and threw them out your school? And he said to me, man, you didn't see all the teachers and administrators I had to throw out of here. The movie didn't depict that. He said, but this was my alma mater, and I was hired to do one thing and one thing only. And I said, what was that, Joe? He said, restore the splendor. Restore the splendor. I interviewed Marva Collins. She was on the panel. No one knew her in the Atlanta area. And they said, Dr. Cole, this might be a good inroad for you to go ahead and meet folks in the community. She said, okay. And it was at one of the large black churches here in Atlanta, and all the other panelists got up there and said, get rid of SAT, get rid of ACT, it's biased, blacks don't score well. And the hour was getting long, it was in the middle of the week, and they finally introduced Janetta Cole. No one knew who she was. And she got up there and she said, Pastor, thanks for inviting me. And I had a great opportunity meeting all the guests and everything. And this panel discussion is so necessary and so needed. But I don't want to take anybody's time. I know the hour is long, but I just want to say one thing before I leave. If there are any young ladies in this church right now who are holding out hope of attending my school, you're not getting past the front gates till you bring me a 1200 on that SAT and walked out.
Wow, so she raised the standard. Yeah.
That's Janetta Cole. And from there, 200 million, broke all types of blah, 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 this and she didn't know me from Adam, and she gave me 4 hours of her time in her office and just telling me everything that she did, man. I mean, what do they expect, man? Man, and there I am with Ron Brown, Secretary of Commerce under the Clinton administration, and I walked into his office and I said, Mr. Secretary, give me the definition of wealth. Give me the formula for wealth. He says, wealth is creative men and women with access to capital. Then I said, well, give me the formula for poverty. He said, you want to know how somebody can be poor? I said, yeah, give me the formula for poverty. He said, number 1, be of color. Number 2, be female. He said, number 3, be uneducated. Number 4, be with child, and I guarantee that you will be poor. Man, that's 70% of black America right there, man. Well, we can change that. Every room has a door, every door has a key, and look, damn it, every problem has a solution. You have it in your hand. We are all born with spiritual wings. When are you going to use yours and fly? When are you going to use yours and fly? What does the Bible say in Romans 8:30? The truth. Here's the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Free from what? Free that you need or lack anything. That you need or lack anything.
That's good. That's good. I know we're going to bring this to a close, but I know you mentioned something about the average person has 4 dreams or
gets 4 ideas, any one of which, if they had the guts, the courage, the fortitude, would make them financially independent. In other words, if you got the grit. If you got the grit. 4 ideas a year, any one of which will make you financially independent.
That's amazing.
And you know, financial independence is the #1 stumbling block to becoming a millionaire. I mean, I asked these millionaires, I said, first of all, I said, you know, the average age of a black millionaire is 52. And I said, how old were you when you earned six figures? And 99.9% of the time, it came back age 30. So I tell my students, if you earn six figures by age 30, don't let me confuse you. Don't read my books. Keep doing what you're doing. And guaranteed, you're going to break seven figures. Okay, so average, age 30, six figures. I said, when did you get the dream that you can break the threshold of seven? 11 years later, age 41. And then 41 to 52. I said, well, what in the world happened? They got comfortable.
Wow.
They got comfortable. Was what comes with financial independence. What is financial independence? $250,000 a year. What is $250,000? You can outrun your spending habits at $250 a year.
Easily.
You got a child want to go to college? Here's the card. Swear out cash. Mortgage ain't no problem. Baby girl, go get that new car. Go get that new outfit. What is $250,000? That's lifestyle.
Yeah.
But I mean, what comes past lifestyle? Leaving a legacy, something bigger than you. That's millionaireship.
That's it.
That's passing baton on to future generations.
That's what it should be about.
And that's what we need to do. And that's what other countries, okay, 35,000 black millionaires in the United States. On par, we are equal to Qatar. Qatar is the wealthiest country on the planet, okay? You have 35,000 black millionaires in the United States, and you have 30,000 people in Qatar who are millionaires. But here's the problem. You got 34 million African Americans, and you have less than 1 million people who live in Qatar.
Wow.
So, I mean, we got to see wealth as a viable option. I'm not telling everybody you got to be a millionaire. I'm not telling everybody you got to be a business owner. What I want you fulfilled. Tell me that you found your life's purpose. That you were smelling all the roses along the way. That you're going to be the best at what you do. What did Martin Luther King say? I don't care if you sweep the streets. Do it like Michelangelo painted. Do it like Beethoven conducted music. You know, let me see the best in you. Henry David Thoreau said the same thing. He said, you know, walk to a beat of a different drummer. Sing your song. Don't die with your music left in you. And I tell my students, when I walk into the classroom, listen, you hearing my music. You come to my office in the School of Business, walk in my office and walk out. Before you walk out, baby girl, cut the lights out. Go ahead. When you hit the light switch in my office, the last image that your two beautiful little eyes, and you got them beautiful little eyes, are going to see. Number one, you're going to see a little picture of my personal icon, W.B. Du Bois. I got no problem telling people, man, I want to be just like the boys. Michael Eric Dyson tells people he want to be like the boys. Henry Skip Gates says, I want to be just like the boys. Cornel West says, man, I want to be just like, I'm no different, I want to be just like the boys. And then under that picture of the boys, I got the following words. The last image that I see before I go in that classroom, this is DK. Before you stand before your students today, never forget, a poor teacher complains. A good teacher explains. An excellent teacher demonstrates. But a great teacher inspires. You got two types of leaders. And you can lead 50 million ways. You can lead by your job title. You can lead by the money that you have in your pocket. You can lead by who you know. You can lead 50 million, but you got those who lead and those who inspire. That's level 5 leadership. We need level 5 leaders, baby. I don't care what you do for a living. I showed my students a picture of, her name is Tony Frazier. And she had on, I gave her a School of Business t-shirt. And I put it up there in my PowerPoint presentation. We were talking about level 5 leaders. I showed them different examples of black leaders. And I said, this is probably the best example of a level 5 leader. And when the picture came up, they looked at it. I said, I know her. I said, you know Tony Frazier? I said, yeah. She works in housekeeping. I said, yeah. She's the woman who cleans my office at night. I said, but she cleans offices. I said, what does that have to do with it? I said, Tony Frazier came to me and she said, Dr. Kimbro, I got a gift. I said, Miss Frazier, what is your gift? She said, well, the Lord placed me in the housekeeping department at Clark Atlanta, and I'm blessed to have this job. And I promised him that I'm to do the best job that I possibly can. I said, are you the best student that you can possibly be? I said, you know, she's level 5 leader right there. And I said, I said, I can always tell when Miss Frazier cleaned my office. Because she goes the extra. She lifts up the keyboard, gets the dust. If I have papers, blah, blah, papers are nice stacked. If I got books are stacked right there. I said, anybody else? Empty garbage and gone. I can always tell. And she said to me, she said, and she liked the CAU t-shirt because the lady's third t-shirt is pink. And she said, Dr. Kimbro, she said, I like this because I like the pink color. I said, why do you like the pink color, Miss Frazier? She said, because on my days off, I go to nursing homes and I visit the sick and shut in. And some of the people in the nursing homes, their bodies are afflicted to cancer. And I always sign up for the cancer walk, and I always walk for them. And I said, next cancer walk, I'm wearing a pink t-shirt.
That's cute.
I said, that's level 5. That's what Martin Luther King said.
That's awesome.
I said, she's making a difference. You making a difference? Yeah. What are you doing? You online? I said, when Zuckerberg came up with Facebook, when Chad Hurley came up with YouTube, when Kevin Systrom came up with Instagram, when Jack Dorsey came up with Twitter, I said when Reid Hoffman came up with LinkedIn, they came up with these social media platforms to change the world. They didn't come up with the social media for you to gossip. They came up with, here's a way that you can connect with somebody who's in Bangladesh who doesn't have adequate drinking water. Here's somebody in India now might be able to get a school uniform because they're not allowed in the school without a uniform. You can make a difference. I said, man, I said, you got, every second of the day, you got 4 children dying every second of the day for starvation. Man, you can go ahead and get them a sandwich, brother. That's powerful. You can do that. And that's why they came up with these platforms to change the world. Not to find out what Nicki Minaj is wearing to the BET.
We don't care about that.
We don't care about that, baby girl.
Yeah, but I totally agree with you using social media as a platform to network and connect. But anyway, we're down to the wire.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
This has been great.
I love the ambiance, man. Baby, we looking good in something low and long, but this is high and wide. Little girl, what you doing driving this hog, baby? I'll just take this car from you.
God is good.
You can do 2 things. All you can do is cry and pray. I'll just take this car from you. You don't know what you're doing in it. And when you take it back into service, then they're going to take one look at you and just take advantage of it. Girl, you need this. I'll go ahead and give it to me.
No, I have standards.
Okay.
I have standards when it comes to my money.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So you got to take yours back at every 5,000 miles?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that, but I'm a little ways from that.
Yeah. Has it had the first servicing yet?
No.
Wow, I can't see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll take it back for you. Make sure it's on the upper note.
I appreciate it. But anyway, how can people reach out to you?
They can hit me up in DennisKimbro.com, www. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter, I am all over the place. I got 50 million people sitting in my classes at Clark Atlanta all the time. All the time. From MBAs to mamas and grandmamas. They go over to the bookstore and they say, well, he teaches. He does? Where's his classroom? Over there, they come over there. Dr. Kimbro, can summer? I said, I'm in the middle of class. It's not a book signing. Oh, what do I got to catch a plane? I'm in the middle of class.
Yeah.
My students say, Dr. Kimbro, just go ahead and sign the book.
This is,
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, it's so captivating for me, and I'm so delighted. We're so delighted to have you, huh?
Relentless!
So delighted to have you, for real, seriously.
At Harvard, they have a class in Harvard on grit.
Oh, yeah?
Persistence, how to overcome.
Really?
A class.
Wow.
I told you this before, but you changed my life, and I'm entirely grateful. You talked about this teachers and inspirers, and you've done both for me. You actually leave us with takeaway. I actually took away your lesson that was on a video years ago, and I made it work for me. And now I have all these dozens of books and the success, and now I'm coming full circle here with you again.
Yeah.
On Black Friday 2016.
Right.
I hope you come back in the future.
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely.
Black Friday.
And we are streaming still.
We are. Okay, well, so
you want to close out?
Yeah, I'm gonna close out. Yeah. So we're about to bring this to a close, but I'm so, again, like I said, I'm so honored to have you here with us.
I am honored to be with you.
We can get you to come back real soon.
Yeah.
Today, I know it's Black Friday, so I'm gonna end because I do want to go shopping.
There you go. There you go.
Supporting.
I'll tell my wife and daughters I said hi. They were right up there.
So I'm gonna go out and support some of our black businesses.
Yeah.
So,
Any last words, Doc?
Any last words?
Inspiring words for the world?
You know, hopefully I changed a few lives or at least gave some insight. But there is no reinventing of the wheel. Again, I go back to Booker T. Washington. I know I said it early in the show for those who logged on a little bit late. But Dr. Washington was walking down the street in Birmingham, and a white gentleman, brushed up against him and knocked him into a street. And one of his associates picked him up and said, "Dr. Washington, you gonna let that man get away with that?" And Booker T. Washington said, "No, I will not retaliate. I will never give an individual any reason to further hate. Start where you are with what you have, knowing that what you have is plenty enough. And that's going to make all the difference in the world." That's powerful.
That's powerful.
Man, and here you got Nelson Mandela. He's days before making his transition. And a journalist, asked Nelson Mandela, he says, "Nelson," he said, can you leave us with some inspiring thoughts? Can I ask you a question? What is the purpose of life?" And Mandela, fighting for every breath, answered the question in a Socratic method. He said, "The best way for me to answer your question is to ask you a question." He said, "Have you closed the gap between your potential and performance? And have you moved from fear to fearless?" He said, "If you've done those things, you found the purpose of life." Wow.
Well, folks.
Yep. He said, "Have you closed the gap between potential and performance? And have you personally moved from fear to fearless?"
There you have it. There you have it. And that's all the time we have for today. Be sure to visit us on our website at ontopatlanta.com and follow us on Facebook. Please share. Make sure if you missed anything, you can always go back and review the video. All right? Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Be easy.